What's going on, everybody? And we're taking another look at the LG V20. Now, the LG V20 that we were able to play with in Berlin, Germany during IFA 2016 has already gotten a lot of coverage here at AndroidAuthority.com, and one of the final things that we did was compare it to the LG V10 we had in our pockets. Now, the LG V10 from last year might have been somewhat underrated. It did provide a lot of power user features on top of the great camera package that had all of the tools needed for great photography and videography. So of course we have the next evolution, and in the V20, a number of things might be the same, but there's plenty to be excited about. The V10 and the V20 still have 5.7-inch displays, which are pretty much the reason why they are larger devices, and they both come in at Quad HD resolution. Underneath the surface, the iteration forward is kind of small when it comes to processing, because the Snapdragon 808 of last year has been bumped up to this year's Snapdragon 820. Not much of a surprise there, especially if the V20 is supposed to be a high-end flagship. It should have the Snapdragon 820 after all. Where we do see a pretty radical change is in the design. The V10 last year was pretty much widely considered one of the more unique looking phones. After all, it was one of the few phones that still had removable backing, and this one was made of plastic. Take that out and you get to the replaceable battery and the micro SD card slot. Now, even then, a metal frame around the device gave the V10 a bit of a unique look compared to other devices. And it still had that design language where you had the power button on the back with the volume rockers flanking it. Fast forward to the LG V20, which now has a full metal design. Some people have already said that what made the V10 somewhat unique in the design department was lost in translation to the V20, but we still think it's a wonderful looking device. It'll look somewhat and definitely feel a bit like a Nexus 6P due to its size and that full metal construction, but it has the same military grade protection that the V10 had. And that's due to metal that has been recycled from airplanes. One thing you can do still is remove the backing by pressing a small button on the side to release that metal backing, and it's a very sturdy feeling piece of metal. We even put the V20 to a drop test, and it wasn't until we got to our final drop from very high up, right onto its face, that something actually broke. And no surprise here, it was the screen. Getting underneath all of that surface level stuff, we get straight to the changes in the hardware. And one of the first things that changed was the battery capacity. You're not getting a whole lot more in the LG V20. You have 3200 milliamp hours as compared to 3000, but you also get the change to Quick Charge 3.0 in that now USB Type-C slot. And now the LG V20 is also a phone made for audiophiles because it has a quad DAC installed. Compared to the V20, this is going to be a big leap forward, especially for people who really want to get awesome audio out of their smartphone. But that means we can finally get to the cameras, and the V10 was the first to have a dual lens setup on the front. That is still kind of the case in the LG V20, except on the V20 you get a wide-angle lens that is then cropped in when you want a more narrow field of view. The V10 had a pretty powerful camera on the rear, coming in at 16 megapixels at f1.8 aperture, which is still what you get on the V20, but now the V20 camera has an extra friend. Taking a cue from the LG G5, there is now a wide-angle lens at 8 megapixels and f2.4 aperture that can bolster the experience for rear camera shooting. And on top of that, you still have all of the manual controls for video that made the V10 so popular in the first place. And they continue in the V20 with enhancements on top like Steady Record 2.0, which takes optical image stabilization and adds in even more powerful software stabilization, so if you have really shaky hands, the V20 has got your back. Not to mention the ability to record lossless audio and have all of the different controls to change the gain and also the directional mics so that you have all of the tools needed to create some of the best videos that you possibly can. We're going to put a lot of these features to the test in future videos where we use the V20 as a main camera, and you can already see one of those here in a vlogging with a smartphone video that we already did in Berlin here at AndroidAuthority.com's YouTube channel. And finally, when it comes to software, we have the obvious change. From the V10 to the V20, we now have Android 7.0, and the V20 is the first phone that will be widely released to have Android Nougat. Now, there are other changes involved as well, as the software that LG creates is now less and less a part of the overall experience. In the V10, you had a lot of LG enhancements, let's say, like even the Q-Slide applications and their version of the dual window, but in the LG V20, it's basically Android Nougat with a few little enhancements put on top. LG has really dialed it back and allowed Android Nougat to be at the helm. Even their dual window has been replaced by Nougat's own built-in multi-window. It's overall a more streamlined experience because it's moving closer to a stock version of Android that you may already be familiar with if you have a Nexus and already got Android 7. There's still a bit of time left until we get the final units of the LG V20, but in comparing it to the V10, we are really excited to see what changes were made going forward, while still retaining a lot of what made the V10 such a great device. The V20 just might be the phone that you're waiting for if you are a power user that enjoyed